Wrestling fans get bored of the same old shtick or stuff that's just not working in no time at all. When it came to each and every one of the talented folks on this list though, they thankfully realized it was time for a change before it was too late. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are 11 genius tweaks that made lame wrestling gimmicks great. Number 11, a tweak from badass hero to badass villain for Ronda Rousey. It honestly cannot be understated just how compelling Ronda Rousey's first WWE run really was from start to finish. Before she was being royally botched and fumbled in the time post-Royal Rumble 2022 comeback, Ronnie enjoyed an electric start to life as a pro wrestler, producing magic alongside Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, and Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 34. She'd then embark on a superb few months as an unstoppable babyface in the company, dominating all who stood in her way as the MMA badass eventually got her hands on Raw Women's Championship gold. It didn't matter that she wasn't the strongest on the mic. Rousey's unpredictable and often explosive work on it still made for captivating television. You just never knew what she was going to do next. And when the fans did inevitably decide they'd had enough of the predictably dominant baddest woman on the planet routine after her Survivor Series battle with Charlotte Flair, all of the above was eventually seamlessly used for a pissed off badass role instead. Rousey's unpredictable eruptions on the stick worked a treat as the out-of-control badass champion, and the same could be said for her equally mesmerizing beatdowns. Changing very little about her overall character, Ronda went from fiery hero to chaotic villain by finally rejecting the fans who had turned on her. They created a monster, damn it. Number 10, heel Jack Perry becomes a scapegoat. The Jack Perry heel character was not working in 2023, was it? It felt like only a matter of time before AEW would pull the trigger on the turn for this one-time Jungle Boy, following increasingly negative reactions towards the pillar. But when said moment finally occurred, Perry just wasn't fully clicking as a baddie, and many were wondering where he could possibly go from here, following a pretty underwhelming program with one-time tag partner Hook. And then that backstage all-in punker altercation happened on the night the aforementioned feud ended, a moment which forced Perry onto the sidelines for what felt like an age. Continuing on as a heel though, when Perry did finally return, he did so with a slightly tweaked persona. Instead of just being a bratty piece of crap who blamed the fans for his failures and seemed to be struggling to figure out who he actually was, Perry confidently took on the role of the frustrated scapegoat in New Japan Pro Wrestling following that all-in punk mess. Ultimately joining forces with the Elite to take out Tony Khan and Kenny Omega, Perry is still technically the same slimy little git he was before. However, with the Young Bucks and Kazuchika Okada backing him up, his once lame entitled shtick now makes for a consistently engaging watch as he smirks to the camera and runs his mouth, safe in the knowledge that his EVP pals will keep the smug soul shielded going forward. Except from Flames. Number 9, Juice Robinson leans into the banter. The transformation of Juice Robinson on AEW programming is proof that you're only ever a tweak away from greatness. When the former NXT and New Japan Pro Wrestling star first showed up on Dynamite to lock up with Jon Moxley back in September 2022, he didn't exactly grab fans' attention. Sure, he put in a decent display in between the ropes, but the forgettable shades and leather vest Bullet Club member he was portraying just wasn't all that intriguing during his early days as an all-elite talent. Sensing he was in danger of getting completely lost in the shuffle on a roster that already had more names than he knew what to do with then, Juice squeezed something different out of his character in 2023. Joining forces with fellow BC man Jay White in April, Robinson began to descend into thrilling madness in front of our eyes, becoming Switchblade's bizarre personal cheerleader as he hilariously gurned and oddly danced his way through matches and promos. And the fact both AEW and Bullet Club Gold as a whole weren't quite the same without this welcome addition of madness in the time after Rock Hard went down injured is a testament to just how successful this brilliant nutty tweak really was. Number 8, Logan Paul finally understands the assignment. Some folks are just naturally unlikable, aren't they? That's the way it is. And no matter how hard Logan Paul fought against it after initially signing with WWE in 2022, his natural arrogance and status as a social media megastar made him the perfect heel for the WWE fanbase to hurl abuse at. For the longest time though, WWE and the cocky star himself insisted on trying to shove this confident hero gimmick down the throats of those watching on, in the hopes they would somehow connect with this irritating, smug, impulsive person. They didn't, of course, because the supposed babyface character was still one you wanted even the most dastardly heel to smack in the mug. And after finally realizing the experiment had well and truly failed, Paul smartly tweaked his persona in 2023 to that of a 360-degree entertainer. one who was done looking for the approval of the fans. It wasn't his fault they didn't understand one of the most talented part-time performers of recent times was standing right in front of them, you see. He was still just as brash and annoyingly confident as ever, but now he was wisely leaning into the boos rather than trying to fight them. Is Logan Paul the best wrestling heel of the last 5 years? Well, if he's not, then I want to know who you think is in the comments section right down below. Number 7, Austin Theory joins forces with a fellow a-hole. As a singles villain, Austin Theory was going nowhere fast. Sure, he had the physique, the in-ring ability, and time on his side, but not even the company strapping rocket after rocket to his back could convince audiences this was a star destined for main event greatness. Money in the Bank and John Cena victories couldn't mask the fact that Theory just didn't really boast enough charisma to keep an audience interested in whatever the hell he was doing. The promo delivery was dull, matches, though worked well enough, were often forgettable, and his overall presentation just screamed generic creator wrestler. In what eventually turned out to be a properly masterful tweak though, a Triple H who clearly wasn't all that convinced by the Theory main event project either, decided to throw him into a unit with then recent NXT call-up Grayson Waller. Alongside the gifted smack talker and effortlessly irritating Australian, Theory's go-away heat or even the more painful sound of apathy soon became genuinely aggravated reactions, as the two helped out Logan Paul and butted heads with the likes of Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins heading into WrestleMania 40. With a glorious slime ball like Waller to bounce off, Theory has noticeably grown more confident as a heelish performer every single week, and the pair walking out of the show of shows as WWE Tag Team Champions. A villainous mid-match win that was met with the perfect wave of heat was yet more proof that this tweak from singles heel to tag team a-hole was a very wise move. Number 6, a Liv Morgan with more of an edge forces you to watch her. Similarly to the aforementioned Theory, despite winning Money in the Bank and becoming SmackDown Women's Champion over the last few years, the Liv Morgan character never really kicked on to become a properly engaging part of the weekly product. On the back of being booked to look like a fluke champ thanks to a dreadful bit of screwy SummerSlam business with Ronda Rousey, a brief flirtation with a more extreme version of her character was soon followed by a run as Women's Tag Team Champions alongside Raquel Rodriguez. And that was just fine, really, wasn't it? But then Morgan found herself being attacked by Women's World Champion Rhea Ripley as a way of writing her off TV due to a shoulder injury in the summer of 2023. And it was that vicious act which opened the door for a much-needed tweak, taking that smiley, often just happy to be here attitude and injecting some intriguing edge into the mix. The Morgan who eventually returned on her revenge tour finally felt like a three-dimensional figure with a clear focus. She stopped at nothing to take the gold that Mammy once wore, and has been a far more compelling figure of late when biting back at the audience and putting Ripley on the shelf than she was as Blue Shell champion in 2022. This vengeance-obsessed Liv is already an improvement on the one we'd been watching in the years prior. Thanks for checking out this list today, folks, and if you're enjoying what you're watching, then hit that subscribe button down below for more of this What Culture Wrestling stuff in your day. Number 5, Nia Jax becomes an actual irresistible force. While she certainly always looked the part of an unstoppable wrestling monster, Nia Jax's sometimes sloppy work in between the ropes and the poor booking of her character ultimately destroyed the irresistible force's aura during her first run. From the moment she returned to target Rhea Ripley in September of 2023 though, it was clear that this was not the same bulldozer who'd been lumped into an afterthought of a women's tag team division during the dying days of her last full-time spell with the company. Not only was this tweaked version of Jax now being booked like a genuine threat, she'd also evidently put in the work to become a more effective and safer worker inside of the squared circle. Her impressive displays as a properly intimidating threat to overcome against Becky Lynch and Ripley in 2024 in particular have both helped really establish Jax as one of the new final bosses of the division, much like her cousin. Oh, we will get there. Nia's performances in WWE's typical promo battles have noticeably improved too, with her growing confidence in this monster heel role leading to a far more assured, cocky delivery on the mic. Jax always had the makings of a real wrecking machine capable of being used to get valiant babyfaces over. And now, after some slightly bolder booking and a ton of hard work outside of the ring, that potential has been molded into a Queen of the Ring to be properly feared on the roster. Number 4, the Young Bucks embrace their EVP status. Now, the Young Bucks had already been gradually moving into heelish territory in the time before they returned to challenge Sting and Darby Allin in early 2024. And while it might be a bit harsh to class their gimmicks as completely lame at this point, there's also no denying that Matt and Nick Jackson were in need of a refresh in the wake of losing the ROH 6-man titles with Hangman Page, before throwing a tantrum shortly after, and then failing to defeat the Golden Jet at Full Gear 2023. That eventual refresh/tweak announced itself on the night of January 10th, with the Bucks walking out onto the Dynamite stage dressed like a pair of wonderful douchebags. This was merely the first sign of the conceited attitude they were about to bring to this particular Superkick party. From here, the tag legends finally well and truly embraced their EVP status, handing out fines to those who got in their way, demanding to be called by their God-given names of Matthew and Nicholas, and even tweaking their fan-favorite entrance to a more narcissistic presentation. And just like that, a pair of Bucks who seemed in danger of fading away on the show they helped create were revitalized, bringing in the aforementioned Jack Perry and Kazuchika Okada as they look to fully take over this land of All Elite. Number 3, Jey Uso becomes a real main event star with a Yeet. Jey Uso had gone on quite the journey heading into 2024, after picking up a bit of momentum as a main event singles performer during the pandemic, eventually reuniting with his brother to become record-breaking tag champions, and then finally leaving behind the bloodline in the summer of 2023, the one-time right-hand man landed on Monday nights. Before that Raw move, Jey had certainly had his moments as a single star, but the main event character was never really considered one of the true top babyfaces in the company, mostly because he was often booked to be a loser when he found himself in one-on-one action. The man couldn't buy a win. He wasn't completely lame by any means, but it did seem like the character would struggle to really break through the glass ceiling. However, once he was given that space to breathe and grow as an individual on Raw, not even a few more L's being added to that singles record could keep the Yeet movement from spreading. The introduction of that one little word as part of his overall presentation seemingly transformed Jey into one of the hottest things in wrestling overnight, with every punch and superkick being met with a deafening Yeet. Now sure, most of his work in between the ropes is still rarely gripping, but the satisfying experience of getting lost in a Yeet down or a sea of bouncing arms has helped wash away even the most painful of main event memories. Number 2, Christian Cage adds a turtleneck. In case you needed reminding, Christian Cage is a wrestling genius. Throughout the first stage of his AEW career, the former World Heavyweight Champion largely acted as a fairly standard mentor/father figure for Jungle Boy Jack Perry. You knew where it was all leading to, with that inevitable stabbing in the back coming during June 15, 2022's Road Rager, when Cage finally turned on his protege. But after this rather well-executed heel turn, and a properly shocking follow-up Christian promo planting the patriarch seed with his first of many dead father shots, the program was then ultimately dragged out way longer than it should have been due to Cage suffering an injury early on. So by the time Cage and Jungle Boy did actually collide in a match that lasted longer than 20 seconds, it's safe to say the whole thing had sadly cooled down somewhat, and Christian didn't feel like quite as hot of a baddie as he did back when he initially pulverized the youngster with a concerto. With something as simple as the wearing of a damn sleeveless turtleneck during their Revolution 2023 blow-off though, Cage swiftly re-established himself as the biggest tosser in the building. Just look at that a-hole. He then proceeded to wrestle like a slimy weasel during that final burial battle, and has continued to commit to both of those masterful tweaks during what has become a truly stellar villainous run as the patriarch of AEW. And number 1, The Rock becomes the final boss. There is no denying that The Rock's once golden shtick had finally grown a touch stale by the time he popped up on the day 1 edition of Raw, with his ripping apart and beating down of Jinder Mahal while decked out in full Project Rock attire, not exactly blowing the minds of anyone who'd watched him do the same to Austin Theory, Baron Corbin, and The New Day over the years. And it was the idea of that phoned-in version of The Rock potentially getting in the way of Cody Rhodes finishing his precious story, which had folks feeling a tad frustrated coming into WrestleMania 40. Sensing that the people definitely didn't want their supposed champion in that main event spot though, Dwayne Johnson smartly decided to tweak his role in the story, taking his adored Hollywood Rock gimmick and turning it up to 11. A final boss was born, dropping the Under Armour and decking himself out in flamboyant vests, and occasionally the blood of an American nightmare as Rock unleashed a level of intensity and, well, electricity that wrestling viewers hadn't really seen from him ever. It may have taken a WWE Universe rejecting his planned babyface showdown against his cousin to get there, but have they not, the world would have never been treated to the foul-mouthed, unstable TKO board member version of Rock the people now simply cannot wait to see again. Finally, we got there. Have you enjoyed this video today? Then check out this 10 next level tweaks that took wrestlers from lame to cool as F-word too. It's got more of the gimmick tweaking goodness in it, folks, so check it out.